friends. My name is John Moore, and I'm a shamanic teacher and practitioner from the state of Maine in the U.S. And something interesting happened to me last night that has been happening quite frequently, and so I wanted to stop and do a little video about it and answer the question, why does shamanism keep coming up for me? I went last night. Yesterday was the spring equinox. As I'm recording this, I don't know when you're watching it. This could be, 100 years from now, for all I know. But yesterday was a spring equinox. Last night I attended what's called a healing circle that was put on by a friend of mine who practices integrated energy therapy, IET. I think that's what it stands for. Which I'm not all that familiar with, but it's a healing modality, and I decided to attend. It was a cool event. I haven't been to a lot of in-person events since the pandemic, and everybody, the room was set up safely, and everybody there was safe. We all had to answer health questionnaires before we went. If we were going to be in extremely close proximity to people, we were encouraged to wear masks. So I felt really safe about going. And, so I went to this event. It was a small event. There were 5 of us, including the host, in the room. And there were, I think, 2 people who called in over Zoom from different areas of the country. And so in the beginning, we all went around and introduced ourselves. And there were people there who were mindful movement coaches. And somebody who was there was just a teacher, like a public school teacher who just interested in healing, and another person who was, I think, a Reiki practitioner or something. So there were, people from different backgrounds there. And it's kind of a cool thing to be able to talk to people who do different modalities. I have great respect for other modalities. I don't claim to have expertise in any of them, but I really, really enjoy talking to people about what they do, particularly when they're passionate, particularly when people are really passionate about what they do. I'm extremely passionate about shamanism. As you can tell, I can't shut up about it. And I hope it comes through when I do these videos that I really like. This is my path. I don't proselytize. I don't tell people they should be doing shamanism. It is not, and I will say up front, it's not a path for everybody. It certainly isn't. However, an interesting thing happened that has been happening pretty frequently to me. So, we went around, we introduced ourselves. I said, I'm John, I'm a shamanic practitioner and I teach shamanism, and, I live here, and et cetera, and introduced myself. And, another woman in the room who did some other kind of modality said, and I'm really interested in shamanism, and shamanism keeps coming up for me. And I have an acupuncturist who was talking to me about shamanism. And, I used to think, Shaman, which I think is funny. And that'll be the name of my rock band at some point. I will have a garage band called Shaman. Just kidding. But she said, but I'm really interested in talking to you about shamanism. Okay. And it wasn't my point to go to this event to try to get clients or students or anything like that. I was just going to support my friend, and also had a really, really great experience from, giving and receiving healing from everybody in the room. And then, there was a point in the evening where we were working in a group, and then we were paired off with people in working. And I was working with this other person who was a practitioner, and she stopped me on the way out at the end of the evening and said, shamanism keeps coming up for me. And, I do this and I do this, and it keeps coming up in my meditations and this and that. And it keeps coming up. So that is 2 people in a room of 5 who approached me individually and told me that shamanism, they were interested in shamanism because it kept coming up for them. And the other thing that's been going on for me is that, I have a lot of clients and new students who come to me that say the same thing. Shamanism just keeps coming up to me. So coming up for me. Shamanism keeps coming up for me in different ways. People mention it. I have a dream, this, that, different things happen. And these people who had no interest or idea about shamanism come to it from this thing where it keeps coming up for them. So I want to talk about why that is, and this is my theory because I don't claim to know everything, but I have a few ideas about this. One is that, one of the ways that I explain shamanism, shamanism is a set of spiritual practices that goes back to the beginning of humanity. It's the oldest set that we know of. Shamanism encompasses a worldview, right? So it's an animistic worldview, et cetera, et cetera. And the shaman and, the practice of shamanism is also an archetype in the human psyche. And I'll tell you why I say this, because this figure of the shaman, whatever word it's used in whatever culture it comes from, but the function, the spiritual function of the shaman in throughout indigenous cultures and other pre-Christian culture is relatively universal. It's an important role because there wouldn't be an evolutionary reason for it. Like, it would have died out if there was no reason for it. Like, we don't have and anything I mention, somebody's going to come up with an exception. Well, I know a guy who does that. We don't really have haberdasheries anymore, and we don't have people who repair penny farthing bicycles anymore. I'm sure if I went out and Googled it, I could find one person who specializes in, but as a field, they're not as relevant anymore, so you don't see them everywhere. But there's this, the role of shaman has been around forever, hasn't died off, even though there have been extreme pressures placed against it by more modern religions stamping out alternate practices. So there's, to me, that speaks of there's an evolutionary reason why. Recent research shows that the shamanic state of mind that comes from shamans listening to drums, they tested 500 practitioners listening, doing drum journeys, and they all maintained this unique brain state. So there's this unique thing that our brain has the ability to do, this unique state that our brain has the ability to form, that only happens during shamanism. It doesn't happen during meditation. It doesn't happen when you're on drugs, although it is close to when you are on magic mushrooms, psilocybin, but yet it's still different. So there's this unique brain state, this unique thing that we are able to do. And whether you think we were placed here 6,000 years ago by the hand of God, or that evolution is real, I happen to believe in evolution, and I look at the scientific evidence of that, and it all makes sense to me, and things line up really nicely. There are evolutionary reasons for just about everything. Not all of it applies to the modern world, right? Not everything we've evolved to do, like the way we handle trauma sometimes and that sort of thing, are throwbacks to caveman days. Don't work well. But the role of shaman has a huge resurgence, upsurgence, significant interest that's going on today, and it keeps coming up from people, either from their loved ones mentioning it or other professionals referring them. I have clients referred to me by Reiki practitioners, by acupuncturists, by therapists, traditional talk therapists. So it's coming up more and more and more. So when I say it's archetypal, I mean the role, the practice, all of these things, they're wired into us on a biological level. On a spiritual level, absolutely. But even on a biological level, our ability to enter the shamanic state, and it does not matter. And this is one of the reasons why I really dislike it when people say, you can't practice shamanism because you are not from Siberia or Mongolia, or your parents weren't shamans, or whatever. You know what? My brain does shamanism. My brain does shamanic journeying, and it does it really well. And it doesn't matter who my parents were or what area of the world I was born in. Let's get past that crap, okay? And this is not to take away anything from indigenous cultures whatsoever. They do what they do, and they do it uniquely, and they are amazing at it, and they are in the in the context of their culture, they are what their culture needs. In the context of my culture, do I provide a valuable service? Absolutely. Do I steal from other cultures? No, I do not. I respect other cultures. I do not misappropriate anything from other cultures. But there's this, like, well-intentioned but extremely wrong-minded opinion out there from some people that only people from wherever, and you can pick an area and somebody will stick to that one. If you're not from Mongolia, you can't be doing shamanism. If you're not from Peru, you can't be doing shamanism. Well, people from Peru aren't from Mongolia, and people from Mongolia aren't from Peru, and they do shamanism in a very different way. But I understand it's ignorant. That's mostly ignorance talking. It is well-intentioned, but whatever. So anyway, back to why shamanism is coming up as a thing for many, many people. There is this idea of a shamanic awakening that happens as the result of crisis. And this is archetypal as well. It is in response to crisis, either on an individual level or on a group level or even on a global level. So in many indigenous cultures, you have to go through a crisis, a trauma, a sickness, near-death experience, being hit by lightning, many different things, but you have to have gone through a crisis before you are selected to become a shaman or to start your shamanic training. In some cultures, they actually put you through a crisis called we in English refer to it as an ordeal, a shamanic ordeal, where they will make you go through extreme hardships in order to induce this traumatic experience, to shake you up, the crisis that shakes you up. I also see awakening happening on a global level because we are going through things like, war in Eastern Europe and the pandemic and the craziness with the economy and the political situation and violence around the world. All of these things are traumatic on a global level. And so this creates this impulse, this archetypal impulse to awaken shamanically. Why that is, I think, is because shamans throughout human existence have been really, really good at working with trauma, especially. It is a specialty of most shamanic practitioners. I have videos about soul retrieval and soul loss and how shamans see trauma. But yeah, shamans are good at helping people through the mental, psycho-spiritual aspects of trauma, but also dealing with some of the physical stuff as well. And shamans have to be helpful in ordinary reality, meaning they have to help people grow corn or help people find animals to hunt. Speaking of tribal cultures, that were either hunter-gatherers or are, doing some sort of agriculture or horticulture, these things were important. And, shamans were the ones who said when to plant. They were experts at looking at the seasons and looking at the weather and dealing with people who are dying and dealing with people who, not dealing with, but helping people who are dying and helping helping people grieve. So, the world situation right now is, to use a technical term, cuckoo, right? It's, we in the United States, I think we've lost 1 million people to COVID. When you think, that's just a fraction of a percent, 1 million people is a lot of people. There are thousands of people dying in, the war in Eastern Ukraine. Not Eastern Ukraine, in Eastern Europe and Ukraine currently. There, still ongoing wars in the Middle East. There's a conflict in areas in Africa. There's still a lot of this stuff going on. And, we're bombarded with those messages. But beyond being bombarded with that on a psychological level, there's this kind of spiritual ripple that travels out, this sort of trauma ripple. In the shamanic viewpoint, everything is connected to everything, and everyone is connected to everyone. And when I experience trauma, that ripples out that has an effect on the people around me, and that has, a little bit of a less effect on the people around them that aren't directly connected to me, and so on and so on and so on, like ripples in a pond. The amplitude gets lower and lower as they go out, but essentially it goes out into infinity. And we are connected to everything. So when there is a significant amount of suffering in the world, a crisis, natural disaster happens, or war or famine, or things that go on all the time, or even this pandemic, which is particularly egregious and unique in our lifetimes. My grandmother, still around, 100 and about to turn 106, was around during the Spanish flu, but doesn't remember it because she was a very small child. But she was around during that time, and so for most of us, this is a incredibly unique experience in our lifetime. So this is why I think that shamanism is coming up for a lot of people. And if it is coming up for you repeatedly in different ways, it may be something to explore. You can take an intro class or contact a shamanic teacher. You can go to my website at mainshaman.com, and there's a ton of information there besides these YouTube videos. I even have a free app and a podcast and blog posts and everything you can think of. Everything that I can think of anyway, because I love sharing about shamanism. And again, I'm not proselytizing. It's not for me to decide or say that the path of shamanism is right for anyone. I am merely providing information, and people who are attracted to that information can use it. People who are not attracted to that information can leave it. And and either way is totally fine with me. But if you are interested in shamanism, try, this can be hard, but try to get your information from good sources. Try to get, and how do you tell what a good source is? Look for people who have significant experience, who are teaching. Being famous isn't important at all. It really isn't. There are famous people out there who are not fantastic teachers, but being somewhat well known in the community can be a good indicator with the other things. And then look for things like trustworthiness and forthrightness, and get a feel for who you're learning from. So anyway, I hope that's helpful. If it has been, please subscribe to my channel. I have a ton more videos for you and all kinds of information on shamanism and other things that come up for me. And I will talk to you real soon.